role does sugar play?
Sugar is an interesting component. High sugar diets do affect us as regards depression because of their effect largely on circulation. Sugar impairs circulation. We know this in diabetes. If you have a high blood sugar, you have diabetes. If you have diabetes, one of the hallmarks of diabetes is impaired blood flow. Interestingly, depression often coexists with diabetes, and one of the reasons is impaired blood flow to the prefrontal cortex on the left side of our brains, causing the depression.
Interesting. So we've talked about sugar. We've talked about omega-3s. Tell me about tryptophan.
Tryptophan is the precursor of serotonin in the brain. We frequently hear about medication for depression, and the newer medicines for depression are very good. They're the SSRIs, or serotonin reuptake inhibitors. They help raise the level of serotonin in the brain by preventing its breakdown or its degradation. They're very helpful, and they're the most commonly used antidepressants today. But what about that baseline level of serotonin? That can actually be low because we don't have enough serotonin in our body generally. And the most important precursor of serotonin is tryptophan. Tryptophan is found in many things. It's found in milk. There are 46 milligrams of tryptophan in 100 grams of milk. It's a source, but it's not the best source if you have depression, because it's found in much higher concentrations in other foods. For instance, tofu has not 46, but 747 milligrams per 100 grams. So tofu is a much higher source of tryptophan. Another excellent source of tryptophan is pumpkin seeds. Another is sesame seeds. Another is walnuts. There are others that are very high. Tryptophan is very, very important. I would say if you have depression, make sure you have at least one good source of tryptophan in your diet, and sesame seeds are probably one of the best. They're also rich in calcium, which can help with depression and help your bones. Tofu, of course, is equally good, if not better, but some people don't like it, and that's okay. If you think of it as a medicine, it might be easier to take, though.
So we've talked about a nutritional diet. What about a mental diet?
Well, I think, it's always, we think it's easier to think about diet in terms of what we eat, but I think that thinking about what we take into our minds is also important. And I think both in terms of what we think about and what we read and what we watch, it can make a huge difference to our attitude. And one thing that I have studied and read some recent research about is that it's possible that we can choose what we think about. And that's kind of a hard thing, because you think, okay, this thoughts, maybe I'm trying to go to sleep, and something that I've been thinking about during the day that's a problem and I haven't been able to resolve just keeps going through and through my mind, and that's a very hard thing. And I've had days like that myself. But the truth is that we can decide to choose what we're going to think about and choose to move that thought away from our current time and think about something else. And that ability can get stronger. Just like if we're lifting weights or if we're running or walking, we can get stronger with time. And choosing what we think about can make such a huge difference, because with depression, we have to choose to look away from painful things and choose to look at the things in our lives that are beautiful.
It seems like you mentioned the things that we're watching, the things that we're reading. It seems that today, so many of the things that we're watching are negative.
Very painful.
It's full of violence. It's full of things which are not beautiful. And so what I hear you saying is that those things contribute to depression.
Absolutely. And, you know, particularly with our, you know, what's happening overseas right now, what we see in the news, a lot of it's very painful to read and see. And I think that makes it doubly important to kind of monitor the time we spend either watching the news or reading the news, and make sure that it's balanced out, and maybe even balanced in a more positive way with the time we spend outside, time we're able to spend hiking, gardening, reading a really inspiring book about someone who's able to make a difference with their life. And in Maine, we are so blessed. You know, we have beauty all around us. You know, the ocean, the lakes, the woods, and the mountains at all seasons of the year. And even though, you know, winter is approaching, we still have marvelous opportunities to spend time outside that can really be restoring.
Very good.
It's interesting if you think about thinking, what it does to the brain and blood flow. If I present you with a picture that's very detailed and I say, I want you to look at this picture very intently, immediately on doing that, the blood flow increases markedly to the occipital cortex back in the back of your mind. If I give you a complex task to do with your hands, the part of the brain that controls the hand immediately gets more blood flow. We don't often stop and think about our brain in those terms, but remember, depression is caused and related to problems with blood flow to our brain. So in choosing our thoughts, we control blood flow. That's so important to remember with depression. It's not just, well, I'm going to think happy thoughts now. It's, I am going to take control of the blood flow in my brain by the thoughts I choose to think. And I'm going to help the healing process, even if I've been born with a genetic tendency toward depression. With medication, with exercise, with sunshine, with thought control, I can make a difference.
Are there certain kinds of exercises that folks who struggle with anxiety or depression should engage in?
I think there are. And I think one thing that is fantastic is, and probably particularly important during the winter here in Maine, is to try and go for a walk outside, or, you know, any exercise outside, because we need the light. Not only do we need the aerobic exercise, but we need to be exercising and to be getting as much sunlight as we can.